Good morning, people. It is Mubarakah. So today I wanted to talk to you about the difference between starving and fasting. A lot of people have this question. They think that when we talk about fasting, it's just another way of starving yourself. Or some people are under the impression that when we talk about intermittent fasting, that it's just a different way of calorie restrictions. Both of those things are actually not true. So, for the record, fasting and starving are two completely different things. Starving is unintentionally something that is not under your control, going without nutrients that cause a physiological deprivation. That is very different than fasting. Fasting is when you intentionally do not consume food in a specific amount of time. It is not a nutrient deprivation, right? If somebody is starving, so I shouldn't say intentionally because people don't intentionally starve sometimes when they think they're dieting, but they're not. They're really starving themselves. So, okay, here's the difference. When somebody is starving, they begin to not get enough of certain nutrients, whatever nutrient they're starving themselves from. This is often the reason why we talk about many people in Western society that they can actually be eating and still starving. They can be overweight and obese and still have nutrient deprivation. That is a form of starving. So starving isn't just going without food. Starving is going without the proper nutrients that your body needs to sustain yourself. This is very different than an intentional fast. An intentional fast is you getting the proper nutrients, but you switching the time of day in which you take in those nutrients. When we talk about intermittent fasting, some of the misconceptions about intermittent fasting is that it's just a different way for calorie reduction. That's not actually true, and it doesn't work because it is calorie reduction. The reason why intermittent fasting works has a lot to do with the way that it changes the way your hormones are released, the way they communicate with one another, the way that your body is able to rest and restore itself, and also to work when it's supposed to be working, right? Instead of you like digesting food at 12 o'clock at night, you're actually digesting during the time that you're supposed to be digesting, which is during the daytime, right? So all of these are ways in which you can change the way that, or you can shift your metabolism based on the time of day that you eat. We know that intermittent fasting is effective because of the time span when we eat. That's why it's also called time restricted eating, as opposed to what we eat. So again, I'm going to refer back to my most recent reading in the book you know that I absolutely love, which is called The Circadian Code. And inside of the book, the author talks about a research study that they did with mice in time restricted eating. They gave two groups of mice a high fat, high carb diet to simulate a processed food diet. They took one group of mice and they had them to eat only in a 12-hour span, did not give them access to food in the other time. Took another group of mice and they allowed them to eat all day, 24 hours whenever they wanted. The group of mice who are eating the exact same type of diet actually who was eating the same type of diet, but they were time restricted eating. They actually did not develop the disease that the mice who ate all through the day and all through the night ate. That is a huge, huge benefit of time restricted eating. When we also look at studies, when they've done studies that looked at time-restricted eating or intermittent fasting with eating the same amount of calories of someone who did not do time-restricted eating. They were eating throughout. They did not take a 12-hour minimum break to eating food. The people who did time-restricted eating actually lost weight, eating the same amount of calories of people who were eating 5 times a day and they were eating snacks. They lost more weight. Why is this? One of the reasons, there's many different metabolic changes that happen when you do intermittent fasting, but one of the reasons why it was beneficial, or time-restricted eating is beneficial for weight loss, is because of the hormone shift that happens. When you do intermittent fasting, and if you've never tuned into one of my lives and you know that I use the term interchangeably, time-restricted eating and intermittent fasting means the exact same thing. It is you taking a portion of your day where you're not eating anything, and then you're concentrating your eating window to a certain portion of the day. They mean the exact same thing. So please forgive me for interchanging the two, and you probably like, what is she talking about? Well, I'm talking about the same thing. Time-restricted eating is intermittent fasting. So when you are doing intermittent fasting, the shift that happens in your body is that your insulin level comes down. Now, if you've heard me talk at any point in the last 2 years, you know that I call insulin the domino hormone, because once that hormone changes, it triggers up or down over a dozen other hormones. One of those hormones, or two of those hormones, are leptin and ghrelin. Those are your hunger hormones. Those are the hormones that communicate with your fat cells and communicate with your brain and communicate with your stomach to tell you whether or not you're hungry or whether or not you need to eat. Well, that can actually be off when you are addicted to sugar, when you are overweight or obese and you have more fat cells than you should have for your body size. Those are, because fat cells produce hormones as well. So those are off, and then you find yourself craving, you find yourself eating at night, you find yourself craving the wrong things, processed foods, high carb foods, high fat foods that are also high in carbs. Those things are the things that are more detrimental to your health than foods that are actually going to nourish your body, right? So when leptin and ghrelin is balanced out, your body actually communicates the proper message to you when you are supposed to eat and when you're not supposed to eat. That is what happens when you do intermittent fasting. One of the things that another myth about intermittent fasting is that it is a part of this idea of, oh, it's going to create a bad relationship with food. It does not. It actually improves your relationship with food, because when you can get rid of cravings and when you can get rid of eating out of emotion, and you actually can get rid of not having the willpower, right? When you're not starving or craving or anything, you can actually go and choose foods that are the most beneficial for your goals and for your health, right? Can you imagine just going to the store or to your refrigerator or to your kitchen and saying, you know what? My goal is this, and I'm going to choose this food because it is going to nourish my body and help me achieve my goals, as opposed to, oh my God, I just really want some pasta tonight, or oh my God, I just have to have me some ice cream, right? So now your willpower is low and you're being actually controlled by your cravings. I posted a meme a few weeks ago saying, food is not the boss of me. Hey, sometimes you have to really get to that point where you are like, food is not the boss of me. I am going to control it. So first you control, and it's kind of like a cyclical cycle, actually. First you control the food that you eat, which then shifts your hormones, which then allows you even more control over the food that you eat. So I promise myself that these lives are going to be like 10 minutes long, but I just have so much to share, but I'm going to try to break it up into days. So today, the point is intermittent fasting is not starving. You will not starve because you go 16 hours without food. You will not even starve if you go 24 hours without food, right? If you are eating the proper nutrients and nutrient-dense foods during the time and during your eating window, you are not starving. You are just restricting the window in which your body gets nourished, and also the window in which your body is allowed to restore and repair itself. Starving is deprivation of nutrients. Intermittent fasting is using timing to determine when you intake your nutrients. So don't confuse the two. Intermittent fasting is not about starving yourself. Intermittent fasting is not just a different way of reducing the amount of calories, which isn't true either. We'll talk about that calorie in, calorie out myth at another time. And intermittent fasting is not a system in which is going to change or distort your relationship with food. It actually improves your relationship with food. So think about starting with at least a 16-hour fast if you're not currently doing intermittent fasting, at least 2 days a week, at minimum. And hopefully you'll reap all of the benefits, and it will encourage you to make it a lifestyle. All right. If you were listening and you're not quite sure who this lady is, my name is Mubarakah Ibrahim, and I am a health and happiness coach. You can find me on all social media under Fit Muslima. And if this was helpful for you or informative, go ahead and give me some likes and share and subscribe to all my lives. I come live almost every day of the week. All right. Talk to you then. Assalamu alaikum.